All right, Chapter 7 practice test. Let's check this thing out. So I want you to notice here on Standard 1, you have to use a single multiplier. So to meet this standard, you're going to have to do this with a single multiplier. I know that we have other ways that we can do these, and that's great. But again, to meet the standard, we have to do it this way. So remember that if I want to keep a number the same, I'm going to use 100% or a multiplier of 1. That's the same thing right there. So if I want to change something, like if I want to increase by 18%, I'm going to go up from 100%. So in the case of going up by 18%, that means I'm going to look for 100 plus 18% or 118%. And my multiplier is going to be my decimal form of this. These should both be percents, actually. Sorry, I didn't write them in there. And then my multiplier would be 1.18. So I'm going to take 40. I'm going to multiply it by 1.18. And you're going to be able to use calculators on this. And I'm also going to use a calculator right now once I find one. I was wandering around behind the camera. So 40 times 1.18. And we would say that comes out to 47.2. All right, next one. If we're decreasing by 4%, now I'm going to go down from 100%. So I start at 100. I subtract 4%. I get 96%, which is, as a decimal, 0.96. So now my multiplier, I start with 115. I multiply that by 0.96. And again, I'm going to use my calculator, 115 times 0.96. And that is 110.4. And I will box that also. Number 3, same kind of problem. It's just put into a word problem. You're receiving a raise of 8% at the kid factory. Previously, you made $15 per hour. What is your new rate of pay? So we know it's $15 that we're starting with, and we have a raise of 8%. That's like an increase. So I'm going to have, again, 100% plus 8% means 108% is my multiplier, or 1.08. Make sure you don't write 1.8. That would be 180%. So $15 times 1.08. $15 times 1.08. And that is 16.2. I went a little quick there. I hope that wasn't too fast. I'm feeling very rushed today. But there you go for the percentage there for number 1. So let's move on down to number 2. Standard 2. These are just proportions. I was asked if we can solve them any way we want, and you absolutely can. So I actually have to think about this, which way I want to show you. So I'll show you 2 different ways here. So I'll do it differently on 1 than I do on number 2. On number 1, since the x is already in the numerator here, I just need to get rid of the 40 if I want x by itself. So I know that x is being divided by 40. So if I want to get rid of it, the inverse of dividing by 40 would be to multiply by 40. So on the left side here, that's going to say 40 times 3, which is 120 over 8, is going to equal, the reason I did this is because if I multiply by 40 and divide by 40, they cancel out. They make 1. So x is alone. So that's actually an answer right there. But I actually think 120 might be divisible by 8. And sure enough, it's 15. So x is equal to 15. All right. Now, for number 2, another strategy. I know with my students, I emphasize this. We hear a lot about cross-multiplying. So cross-multiplying means 2 times x would be equal to 3 times 32. But I don't want to just show you cross-multiplying. I want to show you what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're multiplying both sides by both denominators. So 3 times x on this side and 3 times x on this side. On the left, the 3's cancel out, and I'm left with 2x. On the right, the x's cancel out, and I'm left with 3 times 32. So now 3 times 32 is 64. And now this is just like a one-step equation. We're going to divide both sides by 2. And I'm going to move over here. Sorry, my work's so messy. X equals... Oh, wait. Woo! Okay, just made a big mistake. All right, so 3 times 32 is not 64. That's 2 times 32. You know what? I'm going to leave this mistake in there. We're going to go backwards. Just to show you that I'm human. We make mistakes all the time. 3 times 32 is not 64, as I said. That would be 96. So now I'm coming over here. 2x equals 96. We're still going to do the same thing, divide by 2. And 96 divided by 2 is going to be, I have to do this in my head, half of 90 is 45. Suppose 3 more, so 48. So my work is just a mess. I'm so sorry about this. X equals 48. This is just really the way things have been going the last couple days. Struggling a little bit. That's all right. Gonna fight through. All right. Number 3. The ratio of cats to dogs is 7 to 8. If there are 28 cats, how many dogs are there? I'm going to set this up as a ratio. Just a proportion, just like we saw. 7 to 8 is cats to dogs. I even like to label it cats to dogs. And this has to be equal to 28 cats to X dogs. So this one is just like these other ones. You can use either of these methods. Well, this method is harder when you have the X in the bottom because you can't multiply the X away. You can multiply it over to this side and then we can work from there. This method would work for this. I'm going to show you one more method. If I know that I can get from 7 to 28, I can use a giant 1 here. So 7 times what gives me 28? Well, 7 times 4. So if I multiply 8 by the same thing, I'll get 28 in the top, and on the bottom I get 32, which is actually going to be my answer because that's where my X would be. Cool. All right, let's check out 3. A little messy here. Sorry, I don't have a second copy near me right now. For standard 3, find the missing value if the rectangle on the right is scaled from the rectangle on the left. So we need to look for a scale factor here. If you remember back a while ago when we did scale factor, I might have been like chapter 2. Scale factor is new divided by original. So in this case, it would be 55 over 22. These are both divisible by 11. And that would give me 5 over 2. And 5 over 2 is actually equal to 2 1/2. So I know that my scale factor is 2 1/2. Another way to say that would be that if I take my original number and multiply by 2 1/2, I get my new number. So now I'm going to do it with 6 because I need to find out what that question mark is. So 6 times 2 1/2. I would probably change 2 1/2 back to the improper fraction. It's a little easier there. 6 times 5 over 2. I'm going to multiply the numerator because this 6 is over 1. 6 times 5 is 30. 2 times 1 is 2. And 30 divided by 2 is just 15. So my question mark there is going to be equal to 15. Number 2, Steve rides his 3-wheeled motorbike 8/5 of the way to the mall. Notice that's higher than 1, so he went past the mall. If he rode 28 miles, how far was he from the mall when he started? So I know that 8/5 is going to result in my 28 miles. So what I don't know is where I started from. So if I was using my equation here, I said that the whole is equal to, the whole times the scale factor, I'm going to write SF, I hope that's okay, should equal the part. I use this a lot in class. And you could do a similar thing for this one. Well, actually is what we did here. We multiplied. So what I'm going to do here is the whole is the 28. No, I'm sorry. The 28 is the part because that's what we resulted in. The whole is the distance to the mall. So I'm going to go ahead and say X, because I don't know how far I am to the mall, times 8/5 is going to equal that 28 miles that I needed to go. So the distance to the mall times 8/5 of the trip, so it's going to go bigger, is going to equal 28. Now, if I want to get rid of 8/5, we know that we multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5 over 8. And the 5s here are going to cancel out. The 8s are going to cancel out because they both make 1. And x is equal to 28 times 5 over 8. Let's go ahead and use the calculator a bit. 28 times 5 is 140 over 8. And I'll divide it by 8, and I get 17 1/2, or 17.5. All right, let's check out standard number 4. We're almost there. It was a relatively quick one. I might be going insanely fast. I really can't tell. I have a very strange energy today. Okay, number 1. I have a coefficient in front of the variable. We just talked about this right here. We multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1 over 8 would be 8 over 1, or just 8. On this side, I get 1. That's why we multiply by the reciprocal. And x is equal to 3 times 8 would be 24, and 5 times 1 is 5. So 24 over 5, or 4 4/5. Number 2, we have a denominator here. So we need to just get rid of that denominator on this one, because this isn't just a coefficient. So if I want to get rid of that 3, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Sorry for that. That 2 is coming in my way here. My 3's cancel out over here. I get 9x plus 3. And this equals 13 times 3, which is 39. Now we just have a nice 2-step equation. They're called 2-step equations because we're going to subtract something and then divide. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I get 9x equals 36. And then I divide both by 9 to wipe out the 9 there. And I get x equals, 4. Cool. Make sure you guys remember we're dividing. I've had more students this year try to subtract the coefficient away, and you can't do that. All right, last one is my Fraction Busters one. All right, here's number 3. I made a mistake when I started going through it the first time. We're going to try to get rid of the denominators here. So we're going to do that by multiplying by a common denominator. 3 and 5 both go into 15, but 2 does not. But they will all go into 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply every term here by 30. And I do that because when I divide my current denominators into 30, it'll go in an even number of times, and my denominator will be gone. So 2 goes into 30 15 times, and I'm left with 15 times 9, which off the top of my head, I'm having a rough day. I'm not going to try to do that. So 15 times 9. Okay, 135. See, my denominator's gone now. 3 goes into 30 10 times. 10 times 2, I can do that, is 20x. Here it's just 30 times x. Again, don't forget to multiply that one. And then 5 goes into 30 6 times. And 6 times 8 is 48. If you can't tell, I was nervous there for a second. Plus 48. All right, now let's get our x's together. I'm going to add 20x to both sides. And that'll give me 135 equals 50x plus 48. Then I'm going to go ahead and subtract 48 from both sides. And if I was subtracting here, I'm going to, let me show you doing my hand, just practice doing that, because off the top of my head, I don't have that one. 13, I got to borrow from that, make it 12. 15 minus 8 is 7. 12 minus 4 is 8. So 87 equals 50x. And my last step is just to divide that coefficient. So I'm going to divide both sides by 50. And x equals 87 over 50. And it's okay to leave it like this. But if you want to change it, you can change it to 1 and 37 over 50, which is totally cool. All right, again, I feel like I'm a bit of a mess, so I apologize if this wasn't the most clear practice test video in the world. Good luck reviewing for this test.